So I'm going to do this video. I was figuring out what I wanted to do, and then I know last night President sent those horribly worded letters for tariffs, and I'll try to put one up to see how he just randomly put capitalized letters in the letters he sent to these foreign countries. One of them, it's a female prime minister. He addressed her as female in the first part, but then he said Mr. President. So who's in charge of these letters beyond me? Anyways, I was going to talk about how some of the countries yesterday impact Indiana businesses and impact us. And before I get to that, literally an hour or so ago, the president decided he's tariffing copper at 50%. Copper goes into a lot of things, household goods. And so I'll name off a couple things. Plumbing, electrical, wiring. Your home is wired with copper. HVAC systems. I used to install those, so I know a little bit about them. They are used in the coil within the system, so it's copper everywhere. That's why people steal HVAC sometimes, is to sell the copper. And then you got cookware, decorative items. You got clocks and instruments, and it has other uses like your gutters, heat exchangers, roofing. Some people use copper roofing because it lasts longer. So then, on top of that, he said he was going to tariff pharmaceutical companies at 200%, and it will take a year to a year and a half before he implements it, but it's out there. So that's insane. That's an embargo on pharmaceuticals, pretty much. And there's one pharmaceutical I looked up today, genotropin. It's for use for children with growth hormone deficiencies. It's made in 4 places in Europe. It's made in Europe. It's not made in the USA. Okay, we don't make it here. It's made by Pfizer, but Pfizer has plants all over the world. It has scientists all over the world. It's manufactured in Strongest, Sweden, Ravensburg, Germany, Langenargen, Germany, and Purs, Belgium. So he's going to expect these countries to let Pfizer close up all those manufacturing plants and move them to America. That does not take a year. It takes multiple years to do that. That's something that's not going to happen overnight. Anyways, I digress. That just came out today. So yesterday, the president, he put tariffs out on a couple countries in Asia and some in Europe. But I looked it up. What do we import from some of these countries? Japan. We import annually to Indiana $6 to $7 billion a year. The top products are vehicles and auto parts, industrial machinery, electrical machinery. The tariff rate right now is a 25% reciprocal rate and a 10% baseline rate. I'm going to go and guess from what I've read so far that he is going to stack these. So that makes an effective rate of 34%. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I apologize. That's effective August 1st, 2025, unless delayed, but he came out today and said he's not delaying these tariffs anymore. August 1st is the day it implements. There is a taco trade. Trump always chickens out, so who knows what's going to happen with these, okay? Then there's South Korea, which I don't want to say surprised me, but is confusing to me because we already have a free trade agreement with Korea that was signed in 2012. It's called Chorus FTA, so Korea, United States Free Trade Agreement, and it eliminates tariffs, it improved market access, it protected intellectual property. That's what we're big on. Open government procurement, so we could expand into their companies, and we could expand there. Our companies could expand there. Bilateral trade, and so as of 2024, we've as a U.S. as a nation, $197.1 billion were imported from Korea. So where did I have my notes? So what Indiana imports from Korea is $869 million worth of goods a year. That's just Indiana. And that is pharmaceuticals, electrical machinery, plastics, tariff rate 25%, reciprocal baseline 10%, 35% tariff rate. Vietnam. Now remember, a lot of companies pivoted to Vietnam since COVID to get around supply chain issues China was having with all the shutdowns. So we import in Indiana again $2 billion a year. Top products are consumer electronics, apparel and footwear, furniture, plastics. Tariff rate, that's a little confusing because there's a 20% base rate plus the 10%, 20% reciprocal rate, 10% baseline. But then there is a not transactional, a tariff for goods that are imported to Vietnam for finishing touches and then it gets sent out. That's 40%. So let's go with, let's say 46% is their base rate, counting that. And that is one of the highest among the Asian nations from the Trump policies. Malaysia, I looked these up. We import in Indiana $392 million worth of goods from them. Their top products are electrical components, industrial machinery, furniture, and lighting. Tariff rate is 24% reciprocal, and then there's the baseline tariff, so that should be 34%. Thailand, it's about $690 million we import in Indiana from Thailand. Top products, medical and optical instruments, machinery, electronics. Tariff rate, 36%, baseline, 10%, so it should put you about 46%. So once you're getting past that 10% we have currently, that starts becoming prohibitive to do business with that country. Because remember, we're paying the tariff, not the country. Indonesia, $433 million imported to Indiana. Top products are machinery, footwear, rubber, and tires. Tariff rate, 32%, reciprocal, 10% baseline, puts you at 42%. So that is, I think, was $11.2 billion Indiana imports from just Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. That means the companies that import these goods from those countries to here are paying that increased price, which means that has to be passed on. Now, there's some theories that, you could eat 10%. That's possible to get around. You can eat it for a little bit. But remember, businesses are in the business to make money. There could only be so much margin compression on their profits before they have to pass it on to us. On average, it seems like this is going to be like 30%, 34% for these countries. They're going to pass that on. They have to pass it on because what do you expect them to do? They cannot eat into their profit. And what's weird is we might own stocks in our 401k in some of these companies. And so now you could be hit with higher prices or you get hit with lower stock value. And they push 401ks in America. We don't really have pensions anymore, so 401ks is where we're at. So how much is this going to cost on tariffs alone? So in Japan, it's going to be a $2.21 billion tariff payment that it's going to cost to import those goods. For South Korea, it's a $300 million extra in payments to import these goods. Vietnam, it's $1.12 billion. Malaysia, it's $130 million. Thailand, it's $290 million. And Indonesia, it's $180 million. So that brings us a total tax increase. A tariff is a tax increase on Indiana businesses to import this stuff, $4.23 billion a year. If these rates hold, if they hold, because who knows what they'll go. They'll go higher, could go lower, who knows. And I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget it. Since many of these imports are industrial machinery, vehicle parts, electronics, and medical equipment, higher input costs could raise prices for Indiana manufacturers and consumers. This is going to lead to increased price for finished goods, cars, electronics, machinery, higher costs for healthcare equipment and pharmaceuticals, and not like healthcare isn't expensive enough. Inflationary pressure on consumer goods, apparel, furniture, footwear from Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia. So I know Trump's been telling you that the countries are going to pay this tariff. They're not. That is a lie. It's a bold-faced lie. He has to know. And if he doesn't, shame on him for not knowing simple, basic economics. I mean, we had a tariff war in the 30s, and Taft's, I can't pronounce it. We had a tariff law. It didn't help, and it hurt, and then they actually repealed it. So we've done this before. A tariff is a direct tax on American companies and American consumers. Why people believe that Japan, Vietnam, South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, whoever else are going to pay these tariff rates is beyond me, because they're not. And I wish people would realize this. And I'm a big believer that we should take basic economics in high school to learn some. These are simple facts, concepts. The importer pays the tariff, not the exporter. Just like when they put reciprocal tariffs on our products, it costs the country to import them, not us. Now, we might lose sales, and these countries might lose sales too, but that's a different story. But that's not the other country paying the tax. That's not us paying the tax. So when you put these tariff rates on, and some of these are at the point where they're embargoes, a 50% cost increase is a 50% cost increase. And I don't know who in this world can take a 50%. If it costs you 50% more to buy a pair of shoes, you're probably going to go look somewhere else for a pair of shoes. But we don't really have American apparel shoemakers in this country. I'm sure there's a few here and there, but those are expensive too. And then you have more people going after the same product, and there's less of that product, prices will go up too. That's, again, another economic fact, supply and demand, and that you learn. And again, this is why I'm a proponent of people learning at least basic economics in high school. I learned it in college. I learned it a little bit in high school. I learned it mainly in college because I majored in accounting and I have my master's. But this is a tax on your consumption. Think about how much it's going to cost you if you have to replace. There's already steel tariffs in place. If you have to replace an HVAC system, you've got to pay more for the steel now. You got to pay more for the components within the HVAC, and you're going to pay more for the labor. Think about how much that's going to cost you extra. I would say just add 30% to whatever it costs today. Just go ahead and add 30% up front for that, okay? And then that's not even taking the fact that the company has to still make their profit on it. It's going to be interesting, rewiring your house, plumbing, when you have to have a plumber come out for a burst copper pipe. That pipe's already gone up in price. Plumber's going to charge you. He's got to make his profit too. That went up, Let me see what else my other examples I gave you just to go on. Gutters, you have to replace gutters. At some point you'd have to. That's more expensive. Water heaters. I had to replace one a couple years ago. That's expensive. I have insurance for that, thank God. But now my insurance will probably go up for stuff like that because it's going to cost the insurance company more money to procure those parts. This is the consequence of bad decision making on our part, all of our parts, and who we elect as our leaders. Because I'm sure Todd Young won't do anything. He doesn't seem to stand up to Trump at all. He got scared that they were going to primary him, and he backed down because he was talking tough for a minute, like, I got to do this. This is what's got to do for good. And they talked about primarying him. He turned around real quick. And Jim Banks has been... I'll put up a tweet. In 2016, Jim Banks talked about how Trump was a bad person and how we deserve better than this. And since then, he has been riding that coattail of Trump, and Jim Banks won't fight for us. Jim Banks doesn't care. Jim Banks, I think, looks up to Trump as a father figure. I don't know. And I'm in District 6. I don't think Jefferson Shreve cares. I've asked him for a town hall multiple times. He's not giving us one. He does not care. Our politicians here in Indiana don't care about this because tariffing, the power to tariff these levies is a congressional power. They could take it back if they wanted to. They won't. They're along for the ride. They're along for this, and they're going to ride this as long as they can because they don't care about you. They don't care that you're going to get an increase of these type of increase here soon. So think about that for a minute. Tariffs are a tax paid by the American business and American consumers. I'll leave you with that. Remember, you have a voice, use it.